Now to another safety story, this time on the water. Concerning numbers about drownings here in Michigan. This is a live look at Lake Michigan this morning. According to the Great Lakes Surf Rescue Project, there have been 31 drownings in the Great Lakes so far just this year. 15 of them were in Lake Michigan. Nearly a dozen people died over the 4th of July at lakes all across Michigan. So we wanted to see what in the heck is going on and ask them how to stay safe. Joining us right now is Bob Pratt, the co-founder and executive director of the Great Lakes Surf Rescue Project. Bob, thank you for your time this morning. The numbers seem high, but I want to ask you to put those in perspective. Is that normal this time of year, or are they high?
July is the most deadly month nationwide, and that includes the Great Lakes region. And unfortunately, we're now at 36 fatal drownings for the year on the 5 Great Lakes, with 18 of them being in Lake Michigan. Unfortunately, this time of year, it's almost a daily occurrence.
So what is it about Lake Michigan, or is it just the fact that it's, you know, our largest body with the most coastline and beach access over there?
Well, you know, a lot of people talk about Lake Michigan being the most dangerous, and that's a little bit of a misnomer. All of the lakes are very dangerous. Lake Michigan has the greatest population density, and for many years, we typically have about half of the fatal drownings on the Great Lakes happen in Lake Michigan. But most of that is at the southern end of the lake, and most of that is due to the population density with Chicago and Grand Rapids and you know the entire lakeshore down there. So you could argue that Lake Superior is more dangerous. It has larger waves, it has colder water, but it just doesn't have the population that Lake Michigan does. So
that makes sense.
The main reason that all the drownings happen on Lake Michigan is the population density, and then some things like the north-south orientation causes some problems, because a lot of our drownings happen, about 30% of our drownings happen on windy, wavy days. So that also plays a part in the problem.
Gotcha. You know, we obviously have a lot of inland lakes here in Metro Detroit and across the state. Most of your focus, I know, is on the Great Lakes. Which, in your opinion, are more dangerous?
The one that you're in. So, you know, all water is dangerous. And if you go to Lake Michigan, understand that it's very different than swimming in a pool. In a pool, the water's always warm and clear, and you know it's a very short distance from one side to another. There's no wind, there's no waves, there's no dangerous currents. When you get on bigger water, and it's, you know, includes like Stony Lake and you know some of the inland lakes, you can have some currents, you can have wind and waves. The water can be much colder, and so all of that plays a part. And then obviously the Great Lakes with very dangerous currents, rip currents and structural currents and things like that.
Do you think it is those rip currents and just the water movement itself that most people tend to underestimate?
It really is. And, you know, drowning is a predominantly male problem across the board, all across the world. About 80% of our drownings happen to us males because we think we're bigger and stronger than we are. We try to impress our friends, and we get into trouble. And so we're also less likely to wear a life jacket. And we've been tracking drownings on the Great Lakes since 2010. We're now we're up over 1,360 or so. And less than 20 were wearing life jackets. And in most of these cases, you will see that people are not wearing proper safety equipment. Leashes on stand-up paddleboards and life jackets whenever you're boating anywhere, and that plays a big part in the drownings that we have here.
Right.
Overestimating your ability plays a big part. Unfortunately, when we look at childhood drownings, lack of parental supervision becomes a big problem. You know, drowning isn't like the movies. It's not waving and yelling, and there's a very short period of time that it happens. Typically, a drowning victim will be at the surface for 20 seconds to a minute. And so if you're supervising children around the water, you need to designate a water watcher, someone whose only responsibility is to make sure that all the kids in the water are safe. So it's a complex issue, and it's going to take a complex solution to make some inroads.
Right. So, you know, it seems that drinking is, you know, kind of goes hand in hand for a lot of people with spending time on the water, on the beach, boating, swimming, but that often, as you know, leads to drowning as well. How do you where do you draw the line in terms of allowing yourself to have a good time? Not saying you have to have a drink to have a good time, but a lot of people want to, with being safe on the water.
Again, we know that alcohol plays a part in the drownings. It plays a bigger part in some of the boating drownings than some of the beach drownings, but it does play a part in a significant number of drownings. So, like with an automobile, be very careful. Designate a sober swimmer, for example, and make sure that they're watching over the people. And really, flotation is the key. In the Coast Guard will tell you that about 80% of our drowning victims involving boating are not wearing a life jacket. Our statistics are even more dire than that because we have a lot of people that are at the beach and typically don't wear a life jacket at the beach. But we encourage people to wear a life jacket all the time when you're recreating on or around the water. And floating really is the key. Every child in America learns how to stop, drop, and roll for fire safety. We'd love everybody in America to understand flip, float, and follow for water safety. Flip over onto your back, which allows you to breathe whenever you want to. It allows you to calm down, conserve your energy, and notice if you're being pulled by a current in one direction or another. And then follow a path back to safety where you're not fighting against that current. So flip, float, and follow is a water safety strategy for people in trouble in the water, just like stop, drop, and roll is for fire safety.
And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there, is that there is a natural instinct to just start swimming towards the shore, but most times that's when you get in most trouble. You've got to swim parallel to get out of that current so you can make it to safety.
Right. And then, it's really important to understand the importance of flotation. A couple of our drownings, unfortunately, this past weekend were would-be rescuers. We had a couple of fathers attempting to save their sons from drowning, which is very laudable. It's a heroic act, but one of them was boating, and so there was definitely some flotation devices on the boat that they could have used. The other one was at a beach. There may have been throw rings or some other rescue equipment on the beach. And so if you're going to attempt to make a rescue, make sure that you have decent swimming ability and make sure that you take something with you that floats. Anything that floats, a volleyball. It doesn't have to be special rescue equipment, but something that floats. And then wearing a life jacket really, really is important. This is actually a Coast Guard approved life jacket. It's inflatable, so if the wearer gets in trouble, they pull the cord and it inflates and provides a flotation device while they're on the water. So there's really no reason not to have a life jacket with you all the time when you're recreating on or around the water.
Okay, Bob, thank you so much for your time with the Great Lakes Surf Rescue Project. Again, we appreciate it, and the numbers speak for themselves. Bob, thank you, sir.
Thanks, Nick.